We have a big story breaking tonight as an increasingly tense fight takes an ugly new turn, with U.S. spy agencies now refusing to share the intel being used to attack the legitimacy of the 2016 election, to some extent. Good evening and welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. The battle over the alleged Russian interference in the 2016 election took a couple of explosive turns in the last 24 hours. First, the Republicans started questioning why they were seeing media stories of Russian involvement that went well beyond what they had been told by these agencies. Then the House Intel Committee demanded an emergency hearing with the CIA, the FBI, the National Security Agency to figure out what's going on here. And now tonight, just hours ago, Republicans forced to cancel that hearing when the intel agencies refused to cooperate, saying they would not be sending any briefers in. In just a moment, we will have reaction from Congressman Peter King of the Homeland Security Committee. But we begin tonight with our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, who's had a busy day in Washington. Catherine?
Well, thank you, Megyn. Late today, the Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee issuing this statement after the CIA said the agency would not send a briefer to Capitol Hill to deconflict reports about Russia's alleged interference in November's election. Congressman Devin Nunes of California writes, the committee is deeply concerned that intransigence in sharing intelligence with Congress can enable the manipulation of intelligence for political purposes. The committee will continue its efforts and will insist that we receive all the necessary cooperation from the relevant leaders of the intelligence community. The classified briefing Thursday on the Hill was going to focus on whether there is new intelligence or analysis that concludes the Russian President Vladimir Putin authorized the cyber activity to ensure a Trump victory. The CIA told the House committee it was too busy with the president's review to help. A former intelligence officer tells Fox News that knowing the Russian leader's intent would be challenging.
If you're going after a leadership target, you have to have someone next to that leader. So the idea of finding out intent has to be clearly defined and based on having a human intelligence asset, a spy, inside of the very circle you're trying to collect on.
With at least 4 investigations on Capitol Hill and a full review requested by President Obama, a former senior intelligence officer said the probes are creating a paper trail that will make it harder for Mr. Trump and the Russian president to build a close relationship after January 20th, Megyn.
Catherine, thank you.
You're
Joining
welcome.
me now with more, New York Congressman Peter King, member of the Homeland Security Committee and Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, good to see you tonight. So what does it tell you that these agencies have refused Congress's demand that they show up and share the intel?
Megyn, this is absolutely disgraceful. All we've heard from the intelligence community over the last several months is that they could not say that there was any attempt to undermine Hillary Clinton to help Donald Trump. The consensus was that there was an attempt by the Russians to put a cloud over the election, to create disunity. Well, that's what's happening right now, and it's the intelligence community that's doing it. There was nothing at all ever told to us. In fact, they said that they couldn't prove it, that there was an attempt to favor one candidate over the other. Director Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, said that publicly on November 17th. And now we have this, as far as I know, there is no decision by the CIA. There is no consensus opinion. And yet we find it in the New York Times and the Washington Post, yet the House Committee on Intelligence was told nothing about this. And yet it's our committee, it's Devin Nunes, who has jurisdiction over the CIA and all the intelligence agencies. This violates all protocols, and it's almost as if people in the intelligence community are carrying out a disinformation campaign against the president-elect of the United States. It's absolutely disgraceful. And if they're not doing it, then it must be someone in the House or the Senate who's leaking false information. And there should be a full investigation of this.
So you're telling me that when the Washington Post had this report on Friday citing anonymous sources saying that the CIA has determined Russia interfered in the election with the purpose of helping Trump's campaign, right, that was the first you heard of it from the Washington Post, and now this would be your next and best attempt to get the CIA to come before you, and you have oversight responsibility over them, to tell you what they know, and you've been refused.
Absolutely. They absolutely refuse. They won't be there tomorrow. They have somebody has the time to leak it to the Washington Post and the New York Times, but they don't have the time to come to Congress, and it's the House Committee on Intelligence that has the absolute jurisdiction over the CIA and the intelligence community.
You don't believe that we're too busy to help you right now because we're busy helping President Obama. You don't believe that?
No, it's their job. It's their job to come. They don't have any choice. They have to come in. So they, and especially when they have created this, here it is the week before the Electoral College's meeting, and
So
someone in the
doing?
Intelligence Committee.
What are they doing?
I think it's
why are the why? I mean, it is tough to believe they don't have time. It's a big agency. They can't find one person to go speak to the Congress who represents us for oversight purposes. So what? Why would they be playing this game and refusing to appear before you?
Well, first of all, I don't think there is any conclusion that they're attempting to favor Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. Who is the CIA? When they say the CIA has made this conclusion, who? Is that Brennan? Who is it in the CIA has done this? There is no finding that we've gotten. There's no assessment that we've seen. If they have what, they had an obligation to show it to us. Maybe there is none. This could be a whole house of cards. I see it as some type of disinformation to discredit the incoming president-elect. And that's absolutely disgraceful. First of all, they should have gone to him.
That's quite an
accusation. They should have gone to the Congress.
I mean, these are our spies who risk their lives to protect us. I mean, that's General Michael Hayden was out yesterday saying, look, this kind of thing, these guys put their lives on the line.
Right,
and what he said was, the CIA director sent people into harm's way to learn things otherwise unavailable.
Right.
And if what is gained is not used or wanted or labeled as suspect or corrupt, by what moral authority does a director put his people at risk? That's from the former head of the CIA. Do you go too far in accusing them of intentionally engaging in a disinformation campaign?
I'm saying that there is someone there who is leaking this out. Why didn't they tell the House Intelligence Committee? That's their obligation. Why didn't they tell the House Intelligence Committee if something so dramatic happened between November 17th and this week to change their assessment? Didn't they have the obligation to come before the Congress and tell us that? We're the ones who have jurisdiction. Devin Nunes is the one they should have gone to. Somebody, Devin Nunes or, again, Speaker of the House, they have an obligation to do that. And then to come out with this, to say the CIA has this, but nobody in the CIA is speaking. No one's on the record. No one at all is on the record. So somebody, if it is true, they're leaking it, and that's a crime. If somebody is making it up, then that's also wrong. This stinks. It really does. It's wrong. And it's, listen, this could well end up being the conclusion sometime. If it is, they have to do it in a proper way. They have not done it. And so far, I just think that this is disgraceful what's happened.
Wow. Extraordinary. Congressman King, great to see you. Thank you, sir.
And let me say, 99% of the people in the CIA are great. There's somebody here, though, who's behind something that's totally irresponsible.
Great to see you. Well, as Congressman King just mentioned, wow. In just 5 days, the 2016 election result will be finalized when members of the Electoral College actually cast their ballots for president. You thought you cast a ballot for president, but you didn't. You voted for these electors who nobody knows. Well, they're supposed to vote for the candidate who won the popular vote in their respective states. And if they do, then Mr. Trump wins, with 306 Electoral College votes to Clinton's 232. But the electors are not necessarily forced to vote that way. In an unprecedented development, powerful Democrats are joining with members of the Electoral College to raise the possibility that they may seek to overturn the election over these allegations that Mr. Trump got a helping hand from the Russians. Again, allegations. Trace Gallagher picks up the story from there. Trace?
And Megyn, because Donald Trump won 306 Electoral College votes, to change the outcome, anti-Trump activists would need to convince 37 Republican electors to vote against him. Harvard constitutional law professor Larry Lessig, himself a brief Democratic presidential candidate, says he knows of 20 GOP electors who are considering ditching Trump. He's even offering them free legal counsel, which could come in handy considering 29 states, including 14 that voted for Trump, have laws that bind electors to the candidate who won. Professor Lessig has offered no evidence to back up his claim, which is being directly contradicted by the Republican National Committee and state GOP committees, who say that only one GOP elector, Chris Suprin of Texas, has revealed his intention to vote against Trump. State and national GOP leaders have also been in constant contact with Republican electors to make sure they lock down their votes, although Democratic operatives are still actively trying to sway those people. But even GOP electors who have criticized Donald Trump say they will still vote for him because they would never dream of disenfranchising their state's voters. And now there are 50 of the so-called Hamilton electors. There were 10. Hamilton, by the way, is a reference to Alexander Hamilton, who said in the Federalist Papers that the president must be elected without undue foreign influence. Those electors, all Democrats except one, are still asking National Intelligence Director James Clapper for a briefing on Russian interference in the election. Outgoing Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid says they deserve that briefing, there's no indication they'll get it. And for the record, the most electors to ever reject a president-elect was in 1808, when 6 turned against James Madison.
6. All right, Trace, thank you. Joining me now, excuse me, Fox News digital politics editor Chris Direwalt. I'm getting over this hideous illness. It's a miracle I am here.
Oh, you mean the election?
So far, they almost got me a cop switch tonight, Direwalt. They actually spent money on my chair, but it failed already. Good to see you. So,
and you.
6 electoral votes 100 plus years ago. Now they say they maybe best case scenario, have 20, which leads their effort exactly where?
Well, not to disagree with Professor Gallagher, but in 1876, they actually overturned the Electoral College. The Electoral College went kablooey because there were disputed totals from the different states. Yeah, no, but this is important because the reason that the Electoral College went kablooey in 1876 between Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes was that there was a massive fight over whether the votes were legitimate. That's why they blew up the Electoral College. That's why they needed a special commission. It's because there was something wrong with the votes. In this case, there's a complaint that Russians were involved in the campaign, but there is no allegation anywhere. No person, not the frothiest Clintonista of all of the frothed Clintonistas, has said that the Russians did anything to the votes, to the machines, to the totals. Where this is coming from is...
They're saying it was a mind meld, getting in people's heads about Hillary being bad because of those WikiLeaks and so on beforehand. I don't know how you quantify that or translate it into an undoing of the election. And I don't know what the Democrats' theory is on it either, Chris. I mean, you tell me, tell the viewers what would happen if they had, these unfaithful electors who went in there and actually tried to hand the election to Hillary Clinton. Then what happens?
Well, if these folks had their way and there were 37 people who voted not for Donald Trump, they'd have to all vote for Hillary Clinton. If they didn't all vote for Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump would just be under 270. They'd send it to the House of Representatives, and he'd still be the president anyway. They're selling snake oil. They're selling false hope to Democrats so they can say, oh, one more time, one more try to stop Trump and, by the way, delegitimize him as he goes into his presidency. When Donald Trump said that the election was rigged and that the votes would be stolen from him if he lost, it would be because the votes were stolen, that was playing recklessly with our system of elections. And Hillary Clinton called him on it. And Hillary Clinton said that was a bad idea.
Yep.
Now we get to the point, Democrats are doing the same thing, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves because we need these institutions to work in order to have this republic function.
Yeah, no matter how disappointed they may be. I mean, the Republicans were disappointed when Barack Obama won twice, but this stuff didn't take place. They're grapes, and they may be very sour, but they're going to have to eat them.
Right, you got to still tip the glass.
Chris, it's great to see you.
You bet.
So up next, we're going to take up this breaking news that we just got to with the CIA and the other intel agencies saying to Congress with Kellyanne Conway, who is here. She's senior advisor to the Trump transition team, and we will ask her, are some in the intel community playing politics here? Plus, the incoming White House chief of staff is suggesting the new administration will be shaking up the traditional relationship with the media. Former White House press secretary Dana Perino is here, along with former Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson, who is rumored to be on the very short list as Trump's potential press secretary. They're both here on What to Expect. Breaking tonight with the president-elect moving closer and closer to the White House, meetings at Trump Tower are ramping up. Today, President-elect Trump sat down with the heads of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and a number of other tech giants, with the notable and perhaps ironic exception of Twitter. Can you believe? We have presidential transition team insider Kellyanne Conway here tonight on the very latest. But first, our chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, gets us up to speed. John?
Megyn, good evening to you. And the official on-background reason why Twitter was not invited to this tech summit today, quote, they are not big enough. This was the highest profile summit to take place so far since the election at Trump Tower, the highest dollar as well. Donald Trump getting together with a room full of high-tech billionaires, most of whom in the room actively campaigned against him, raising a lot of money for Hillary Clinton during the election campaign. We don't know how they felt about the meeting because none of them would stop and talk to the press pool on the way out. But here's the basic case that Donald Trump made. He wants to be all about jobs and growing the economy and feels if everybody is pulling in the same direction, there's a much better chance that the economy will grow and more jobs will be created. And these high-tech billionaires also have a lot at stake with the Trump presidency, too, because they got billions of dollars stashed overseas that they can't bring back unless they want to pay high taxes on it. So he is going to allow them, if he gets his way, to repatriate that money at a much lower rate. He would cut the corporate tax rate to 15%. And he also said when he started the meeting, hey, if you look at these high-tech stocks, they've been doing pretty well since he was elected back on November the 8th. Listen to Trump.
You're doing well right now, and I'm very honored by the bounce. They're all talking about the bounce, so right now everybody on the zone has to like me at least a little bit, but we're going to try and have that bounce continue. And perhaps even more importantly, we want you to keep going with the incredible innovation.
So now the latest on where Trump is with his campaign picks. He's got Ryan Zinke that he's going to be announcing in the next couple of days for Interior. That leaves Agriculture and Veterans Affairs. His top pick for Agriculture right now is the Democratic Senator from North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp. But she is getting her arms twisted and perhaps being threatened with kneecapping by a lot of Democrats who say, if you go take this job, it's likely that they are going to put a Republican in your place. So she might not take it. Second pick is the Congresswoman from South Dakota, Kristi Noem, but she has said that she doesn't want the job. Veterans Affairs is proving to be particularly thorny. They don't yet have a really, really strong candidate. So we might not hear about these, Megan, for the next couple of days and maybe even a couple of weeks. Back to you.
John, thank you. So we haven't heard anything so far from Team Trump about this new fight between Republican leaders and the intel agencies, suggesting there was Russian interference in the election to benefit Donald Trump. But fortunately, we have Kellyanne Conway with us tonight, so we can ask her live. Kellyanne, great to see you.
Thank you, Megan.
What do you make of the fact that the CIA and other spy agencies basically thumbed their nose at their congressional oversight leaders who are supposed to be there for us to keep an eye on them when it comes to this assertion that leaked out to the Washington Post on Friday?
We should all be very concerned about that because you had a closed-door House Intelligence Committee briefing, and no sooner did people walk out, apparently, than some folks were talking to the media. That's unfortunate, and at some level, maybe not in this instance, Megan, but at some point it could put all of us at risk. And for what purpose? To politicize or to curry favor with the mainstream media? None of that is worth leaking secrets.
But do you think that's what they're doing? This is what I was trying to do with Congressman King.
Yes.
The notion that, the CIA is doing anything other than working to protect us would sound very foreign to most people.
Well, and I'm not
suggesting
suggesting that.
They're politicizing this?
No, I think people who want this to be the permanent campaign, who are the election deniers, frankly, and there's a whole group of them. It's not just Team Hillary, but it's a whole group of people who never even conceived the possibility that Donald Trump would be their president, and he's been for 35 days now. They are politicizing it. No, I believe, as the president-elect has said, which is more important than my opinion, he has great faith in the intelligence community. He said that as recently as this weekend. But in this particular instance, if you read some of these news accounts in mainstream papers where people are reading something saying that must be true, I just read 5 paragraphs strong where there is an intimation or an outright assertion that Russian interference changed the election result. That is just not proven. That is just false, and it's dangerous to our democracy. I went back and I looked at what Hillary Clinton said on live television at the last debate in Las Vegas on October 19th. And when Donald Trump said, I'll keep you in suspense whether I'll accept the election results, she shot back with, this is really scary.
She thought it was horrifying.
She thought it was horrifying, but she said, I will accept the election results because she thought she'd win. And now that she hasn't, I think she would be the strongest voice to come out at this moment, Megan. Maybe she'll come and sit here tomorrow night and tell you.
Not bloody likely.
That she wants to call off the dogs. She wants everybody to stop suggesting this without any proof of
Also not likely. Let me ask you about these meetings today. And by the way, is it true that he didn't have Twitter there? Because I know they say they weren't big enough. But the report is that there was a dispute about whether there could be an emoji, the little characters, showing crooked Hillary during the campaign, and Twitter refused, and that Trump was ticked off.
I've never heard discussion of that at all. That would be too unserious given what the stakes are here and how these forums are put together.
He's
I think
not
you have
always
to make
serious.
choices.
Sometimes he's
very focused.
Sometimes he's lighthearted. Sometimes he's
very lighthearted. He's humorous, but he's very serious. He really has the gravity and the responsibility, and I think, frankly, the humility that comes with being the president-elect. He's been in there every day working very hard. I thought today's meeting was fantastic, not just because they were his, quote, political opponents. That doesn't matter in this regard. It matters that you're talking to people, along with the president and the vice president of the United States, Megyn, who actually can make a difference and increase vocational educational opportunities, really get serious about cybersecurity.
Well,
and
at
of
least
course,
he's hearing them.
those
At least he's hearing them.
absolutely.
There can be no criticism of him for hearing.
In fact, his final
viewpoints.
comment was he'd like to do that more often, perhaps even have a quarterly tech meeting.
Now, the question will be, once they don't do what he likes, what does he do to them? And does the relationship continue? Okay, let me ask you this. He's taking some heat, and so are the Trump sons, for attending that meeting, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, because they're the ones who are supposed to take over the Trump organization. And Donald Trump is under fire for not fully divesting himself from his corporation yet. He says the boys are going to run it, but if they're going to run it, what were they doing at that meeting? And shouldn't he more clearly be drawing the lines between the political side of the Trump organization and the business side?
I think that's an unfair accusation against the Trump, quote, adult kids, from people who, again, are just not happy with the election result. And here's why I say that. They can sit in a meeting where their father is convening with the nation's largest tech titans, who also have a responsibility, I think, to the public good, to make sure that we have educational, vocational opportunities.
No, but the next time Facebook or Google deals with Eric or Donald Trump Jr. on a matter relating to the Trump organization, if they ever do,
I think that's
then they
unfair.
understand these are both businessmen and connected and spokespeople
well,
to,
no,
the,
they're
to
not,
the president
I
of the
think
United
that's really
States.
unfair to them, because they're not spokespeople.
Yeah, this isn't coming from Megyn Kelly. This is coming from a lot of people
I know that.
who are
I'm hitting back at those who are suggesting. I read the same reports and the same Twitter feeds, Megyn, and I think it's incredibly irresponsible to say that Don Jr. and Eric and Ivanka and Jared can't be in a meeting with tech
Ivanka
giants.
and Jared are different because they're supposedly not going to be running the Trump organization.
But look,
the
these
boys
are his
sons.
These are his sons.
I know, but
and
he's got to choose, does he not? I mean, are we going to continue to see them in government-related meetings while they're running the Trump organization?
Here's what I do know.
Are we?
That there's a lot of activity on the 25th and 26th floor of the Trump Tower right now, with lawyers and protocol officers, at great expense to the Trump family, frankly, trying to figure out how best to structure and how best to comply with protocols, so that this very unusual situation where you don't have a typical politician who just moves his or her government pension to the next government job, but somebody who's an incredibly brilliant and successful businessman who has assets on many different continents.
Understood.
Trying to.
But the country has a right to believe in its leaders and to understand there are clear lines that have been drawn when it comes to potential conflicts
and they're
of
going
interest.
to announce that. But aren't we happy that you have the transparency and the openness of seeing them in the meeting?
Well, if it's inappropriate, the transparency is like, okay, great, we would have found out. It's not like there were a lot of people there.
It's not inappropriate.
But the question is whether it is clear that, you know, this line has been drawn between the two sides.
These are just incredibly capable executives in the Trump Corporation who will continue to.
No question, but they're going to have to choose which horse they're on. Great to see you, Kellyanne.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
So major players in the incoming Trump administration raising new questions over how a Trump White House will deal with the media, the press. Former Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson is here, along with former White House Press Secretary Dina Perino. They're both going to tell us what this means for America, and we'll ask Katrina whether she's getting the job of White House Press Secretary.
For the last month, I decided not to do interviews because they give you interviews and they chop up your sentences and they cut them short. You'll have this beautiful flowing sentence where the back of the sentence reverts to the front, and they'd cut the back of the sentence off, and I'd say, I never said that. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to deal. They're very dishonest people. I said, no. I said, I'm not going to deal with them.
This beautiful flowing sentence. It was the beautiful flowing sentences that got cut up, and that's why he doesn't talk to the media. That was President-elect Donald Trump last night, taking new shots at the media during his thank you speech in Wisconsin. Then earlier today, Mr. Trump's future White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, making it clear that the incoming administration is going to shake things up when it comes to their relationship with the press.
I think that many things have to change. And, you know, even looking at things like the daily White House briefing from the press secretary, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that things can be done. The point of all of this conversation is that the traditions, while some of them are great, I think it's time to revisit a lot of these things that have been done in the White House, and I can assure you that change is going to happen.
Katrina Pearson is the former national spokesperson for the Trump campaign. She's with us now. Dana Perino's up in a minute. Katrina, great to see you.
Good to see you, Megyn.
So I love that. The beautiful flowing sentences. It's like his words are the Breck shampoo commercial of 2016. It's gorgeous and it's flowing. If only you wouldn't cut it off, you would appreciate how beautiful it was. Let me ask you what they mean when they say some changes are coming.
Well, look, Megyn, Donald Trump was not your traditional candidate. He has made several promises throughout this entire cycle of making changes. The president-elect is a very efficient man. He wants things done very effectively, and that means there are likely going to be changes in all aspects of government.
But come on, walk us down the possibilities. Like one of the things that had people shocked today was that perhaps the White House press corps would not be seated according to rank or news organization, and they might mix things up. Do you think, are they considering that at the Trump level?
Well, I will echo the incoming chief of staff and just say everything's being looked at. There are things that they feel that could be done differently to be more effective. And if that is one of the things they decide, you'll definitely hear about it. But nothing's been decided yet. This is just something that's under discussion because there are things that need to be changed throughout the entire government, not just with the press secretary or in the White House.
What about you? Now, you are rumored to be on the short list. The reports are that Sean Spicer, who was Reince Priebus's deputy at the RNC, is the favorite, if you will. But you're on the list. And then today there was a report that our own Kimberly Guilfoyle might be on the list as well. So you have some stiff competition. But is it a position that you would like?
There are a lot of rumors, and I can't discuss who's being discussed for what position, but I will tell you, Megyn, is I have been coming to Trump Tower for over a year and a half now, and all of a sudden this week it became a headline. So there's really nothing there. I work there. I'm a senior advisor to the Trump transition team, and that's really all this is.
Well, tell us this. On January 21st, after he's been sworn in and there's no more transition team, do you foresee a career in government service?
Well, none of those decisions have been made yet, but I will happily make myself available if the president-elect wants my help. 100%, I fully support Donald Trump. I've told him that from the beginning. I've been on this show a number of times to help him be successful, and I'll continue to do so if he wants me.
You've always been a lovely guest and treated everyone here beautifully and been a loyal defender of his as well. Great to see you, Kat.
Thanks, Megyn.
Joining us now with more, former White House press secretary during the George W. Bush administration and author of the new book, Let Me Tell You About Jasper.
Boy, have I come a long way.
Dana Perino, who's co-host of The Five, which is also big. And congrats on the success of the book.
Thanks, and to you. And good to see you again.
Thank you. I know, we've both been on these book tours. And now back down to business. So the beautiful flowing sentences were being chopped up. And you tell me whether it would be a big deal for Trump to, A, mess up the seating chart at the White House press corps, or B, go beyond that when it comes to access they have to him.
Well, it's a big deal for the press corps. Like you've heard the saying, nobody likes change except for a baby. The press really doesn't like change. And if you look at the business models over the past 15 years, that's been very clear. But they're playing catch up and people adjust. And when it comes to the seating chart, I know that Ari Fleischer did it a little bit differently. I don't know exactly how it happened that when I inherited the press secretary job, we had turned that back over to the White House press corps to decide who sat where, because what did I care? I mean, once the briefing started, I could call on whoever I wanted to.
Well,
so
because Reince Priebus today was saying, he told Hugh Hewitt, he said, look, that this arranged seating thing, that was a Barack Obama deal. George W. Bush
it was a Ronald Reagan deal.
Okay, yeah, because the Barack Obama White House came out today and said, you better check your history, Mr. Priebus.
Yeah.
It wasn't us.
Yeah.
So it's the White House press corps that has a pecking order.
Right.
And if you don't get on the bended knee and kiss the ring, and that would be the head of the White House press corps, not the president, you're not going to get in the front row. There's definitely going to be a change in the way that Trump deals with the media.
Already has.
Right? I mean, that thing about not giving interviews, that's potentially problematic. Although since he was elected, he has given interviews.
Yeah. Especially with, for example, when he sat down with 60 Minutes and then he did Chris Wallace interview. He's done that. He hasn't done some press conferences, but it's only 35 days. And when they get started and they get into the grind of governing, I think that they'll find actually that a daily press briefing is actually very useful, both to the White House and to the press that is charged with covering them.
But Donald Trump loves to be on camera. and he is electric in front of it. He does have this, he said they called me the ratings machine. It's true, he is. And he seems to get a Jones off of that. The idea of him not dealing with the press seems hard to imagine.
Well, think about it. Barack Obama did the same thing. One of the things he did when he first came in was he stopped having the we call them photo dogs, come in for just general pictures. And I thought, why would you do that? Because he never takes a bad picture. And it's access for the press, and it's like easy to do. And for a press secretary, it was one of those things like, boss, can I let the press come in, take a picture? Yes, okay, fine. And then you cross that one off your list. But when President Obama started White House TV and just talking directly to the people, then the press corps was like, oh my gosh, how is that going to work? They adjust and it works itself out. I have no doubt that Donald Trump's team will do some things differently, but I think that they'll also find that there are some basic rules of the road that are beneficial to them, and they can't expect that the White House press corps is going to come in and write glowing stories about their boss. I don't think they expect that.
I don't know if you're right about that.
But their tolerance.
Remember, Trump told the New York Times you're going to be very happy, and I've been saying along they are not going to be very happy, and he is not.
But are they tired of winning? At the New York Times. I don't know.
Dana Perino, tell me more about Jasper. Okay. One final thing. Give me a thought to think about.
He's in South Carolina this week.
Oh, nice.
Or for the holidays.
Nice.
I don't know what else.
Enjoying the fresh air.
I miss him.
Which we don't have in New York City. Great
He's
to
going to wear a
see
sock monkey coat for Christmas.
Wow. All right, let me just let that marinate.
Someone gave it to me for during the book tour.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
Breaking tonight, we are monitoring the situation in Aleppo, Syria tonight, where they are trying to secure a ceasefire so they can evacuate some of the civilians. This comes after horrifying stories of unarmed residents being executed in the street. Just the latest atrocity out of there. Connor Powell is covering the breaking news from our Middle East Bureau tonight. Connor?
Megan, for most of the last 5 years, Aleppo has been controlled by Syrian opposition. And then the Assad regime, backed by Russia, launched a brutal campaign to retake Aleppo. And now really only about a square mile or so is under control by the opposition forces. It has been a brutal, bloody campaign to retake that. The UN describing the situation there as dire. There are reports that the Assad regime is executing people in the streets. Many activists are actually taking to social media to post their farewells. Have a listen.
We wanted freedom. We didn't want anything else but freedom. This world doesn't like freedom, it seems.
Now, the ceasefire is in place to allow both civilians to leave the main areas where there's still some pockets of resistance, and also to allow opposition fighters to flee the city, essentially to surrender without being killed. A ceasefire was supposed to go into effect last night, Megan. That ceasefire, however, never took hold. It appears right now there is a brief moment of calm. Evacuations are meant to begin here in the next hour as the sun is due to rise in Aleppo. And we'll see if that actually happens. The history of ceasefires in Syria, Megan, as you well know, has been very, very difficult to get them to actually take hold, to allow this fighting to stop.
Absolutely. Connor Powell, thank you. Joining us now, Mark Thiessen, a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a Fox News contributor, and Mo Alifi, founding director of Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service. Wow, God, Syria is it's dark. And the question mark, as somebody who worked in the Bush administration, among your other credentials, was you were the chief speechwriter for George W. Bush.
Yep.
Obviously he made decisions when it came to Iraq that the country lives with to this day, the Iraqis do as well, and George W. Bush does. And the question is whether Syria is going to be Barack Obama's Iraq.
Well, it certainly is his responsibility because he's the one who did nothing to stop this situation. I mean, and Josh Earnest was at the podium today and he said, this is a quote, "Even our harshest critics cannot articulate some sort of alternative, and if they had, then the commander-in-chief wouldn't have hesitated to implement it." Well, his critics didn't offer him an alternative. His own national security team offered him an alternative. The alternative was very clear. Step one: don't withdraw all U.S. troops out of Iraq and lift your boot off of the terrorists' necks. All of his military advisors, his Secretary of Defense, all told him, don't do that. We need troops to stay in the country. Step two: do something to support the pro-Western, secular, moderate opposition in Syria. Hillary Clinton General Petraeus, Secretary of Defense Panetta, all came into Obama's office and said, if you do not support the opposition, it's going to create a vacuum that ISIS is going to come in to fill. General Flynn, who was the head of the DIA, warned him, gave him a memo that said, this is a quote from 2012, the deterioration of the situation in Syria has dire consequences, creates the ideal atmosphere for ISIS to return to its old pockets in Mosul and Ramadi, declare an Islamic state, and renew facilitation of terrorist elements from all over the Arab world. That happened. He was warned in 2012.
Mo,
and then
why isn't this on Barack Obama? I mean, it's not like Iraq in that we didn't go over there and start a war with Syria, but they crossed the red line. Barack Obama said they could not cross, and we did nothing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to look back at that moment in time. I think, look, to the greater question as to what this is going to mean for his legacy, I think this is going to be one of those areas that history is going to forever debate as maybe the darkest moment in his foreign policy.
It's a genocide.
Legacy.
We're allowing it to happen.
And the question then is, could it have been prevented without putting significant military presence on the ground? And if you think back to what this president ran on in 2008, what the mood of the country was during that period of time.
But no one made him set that red line. No one made him do that with chemical weapons, saying if you use those, we're coming in. And they did, and he did nothing. And then they were emboldened, Mark Thiessen.
No, absolutely. Well, what happened was his advisors again told him when he sat his case, they leaked it all to the Wall Street Journal. When he said we're not going to enforce the red line, they all went to the Wall Street Journal and said we told him you have to enforce the red line, because what happened is it emboldened the Assad regime, and they have continued. They're using chemical weapons. They're using chlorine gas in Aleppo today, and then you have the refugee
nothing
crisis.
Changes, notwithstanding the videos we see of the children begging for help. Mo, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, look, we had Susan Rice over at Georgetown a couple of months ago to talk about the Obama legacy, and she laid out Syria as the biggest frustration, the biggest challenge that this administration wishes it could have figured out a different way to do. I don't know that there is an easy answer to this, especially with Russia's involvement in recent months. This is now a global conflict, and the next president, who has said he wants to work with Assad, I worry that it's about to get worse before it gets better.
It was never easy, and it's getting harder by the moment.
That's right.
Good to see you both, guys.
500,000 dead.
500,000. Just ahead, the Muslim teen that accused men of attacking her in the subway for her faith is now facing criminal charges. 4 years ago today, we lost 20 children and 6 educators to an act of barbarism. On December 14th, 2012, terror was unleashed in a first-grade classroom as more than 24 innocents were murdered by a gunman at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. Earlier today, a moment of silence and flags were lowered to half-staff to honor the fallen. President Obama remarked today of the children who lived through the tragedy, saying, "We remember the children who held each other in the face of unconscionable evil, who even as they've grown up in the shadow of this tragedy, will grow up loved and cared for more fiercely than ever." Our thoughts here and our prayers are with all of the Newtown families, many of whom we've gotten to know over the years, tonight. Meantime, there is new reaction tonight to a story that looked very disturbing at first glance, but turned out to be a sham. This teenage woman said she was attacked for her faith. It turns out it didn't quite go down that way. Trace Gallagher has the details from L.A. Trace.
Megan, at the time, the 18-year-old claimed 3 drunken young white men taunted her, assaulted her, and hurled a barrage of anti-Islam slurs. She told police the men kept screaming Donald Trump's name, saying, quote, "Oh, look, a blanking terrorist. Get the hell out of the country. You don't belong here." She went on to allege the men tried to pull off her hijab, saying that, "Take that thing off." The student got away and got off at the subway at Grand Central and reported to police, even sat with police officers for hours trying to ID the men on surveillance video. Later blamed the attack on Donald Trump, saying, quote, "The president-elect just promotes this stuff and is very anti-Muslim, very Islamophobic, and he's just condoning it." The New York Daily News called the suspects the brutal bigots and the hate-spewing trio. The LA Times wrote, quote, "Muslim women, plural, targeted in New York, and now we know it never happened. The 18-year-old told police she misguidedly made up the tale to get attention because she was having issues with her family. She has been charged. Megan.
Trace, thanks. We'll be right back. Well, just in time for Christmas, my book, Settle for More, is going on sale for one day only on Amazon tomorrow. Forbes' Stephanie Denning just reviewed the book, writing, quote, I confess I picked up Megyn Kelly's book, Settle for More, curious about the peculiar Trump and Ailes episodes that lit up the news. When I put the book down, I walked away thinking she was a far more interesting character than either of those stories credited her to be. It'll make a great Christmas gift. Amazon tomorrow. Settle for More.